Sponsored by Notion. I've been using the 16-inch MacBook Pro day in, day out as my main computational machine since just before Apple announced it. I've done all the emails and messages, surfed all the websites, watched all the TV, written tens of thousands of words, and edited 7 or so YouTube videos comprising about an hour of A-roll and just a ton of B-roll. In other words, I've hammered on it, and here's how it's held up. I'm Rene Ritchie, and this is the 16-inch MacBook Pro 2 weeks later. I went over all the specs and build-to-order options and all the implementation details in my hands-on and buyer's guide videos, links in the description. So for this, I'm going to focus on my experience to date. Less facts, more feels. And I'm going to start with the new Magic Keyboard. I've said before that I personally preferred the typing experience on the 2016 era butterfly switch keyboards to the 2015 and previous era scissor switch keyboards. The lack of travel didn't bother me in the least, and I vastly preferred the feel and the stability. But I've also said that because other people just flat out hated the butterflies, and as far as I can tell, no one hated the previous scissors, even without considering the reliability issues, they just weren't tenable from a single vendor product. Factor in those reliability issues, and they simply had to go. I won't get into why it took Apple so long to make that change here either. I did a whole video on that last week, and you can go back and watch for the medium-length answer. But I will say I'm super happy they finally did. Now, because I liked the feeling of the butterfly so much, I wasn't actually sure I'd like the new Magic Scissors nearly as much. It was a bit punchy for me at first, and I wasn't used to the extra travel. But mines are funny, they adapt, and after 2 weeks, mine now says this keyboard is the new normal. I can't say I like the feeling more than the butterfly, but I like it every bit as much. I don't really care about the separate escape key. I seldom use it for anything other than exiting states and dialogues, and for that, the more contextual keys on the touch bar are better UX. But it's not every time about me, and I think a lot of pros are legitimately gonna love having it back. I do really like the return of the inverted T arrow keys though. Changing that was folly, sheer folly I tell you, and it's terrific to have them back. It may not please people obsessed with clickety-clack cherry switches and maximal travel, or people who love the low travel of the butterfly, but like the scissor before it, I don't think anyone is going to actively hate it. So, if over the next couple of months and years it proves to be as reliable as the scissor switch keyboards of old, then Apple will truly have righted one of their biggest wrong turns of the last decade. Also, getting back to the touch bar, I still like it in general. In addition to it providing that secure, fraud-preventing display for Touch ID, I still like that it surfaces shortcuts for apps I'd never recall or even think of using if they weren't staring me right in the face. And it's also still the fastest way I've ever found to just fly through my Safari tabs. But aside from it being shortened to make room for the escape key and discrete Touch ID button, going from T1 to T2 and being moved just a hair further back, it really hasn't made any progress at all. I've been hoping for haptics, for example, ever since Apple first introduced it, but so far, still nada. Performance is also terrific. Again, I went over the whole thermals thing in last week's explainer, so I won't recapitulate it here. But even absent Intel managing to push out 10th generation silicon in time for this release, and hence it using the same 9th generation as last spring's update, it manages to eke out even better performance. That's thanks to a new thermal system. And hey, if you can't shrink it, you gotta sink it. Combined with the new graphics chips from AMD, and still offloading some of the tasks of the custom T2 silicon inside, it just tears through Final Cut Pro 10 and a lot more. That Apple is doing so many alternating spec bumps from 8th gen to Vega Pro to 9th gen to Navi like twice a year lately probably pisses off a few buyers who worry that what they get now won't be the latest for long. But screw those buyers. There will always be something better, and Apple should be updating Pro gear as fast as technologically possible. If your workloads need sustained performance, this MacBook Pro will sustain for longer, impressively so, given it's pretty much the same chassis Apple's been using for the last few years. But for me, it's not all about just the rendering time, it's about the working time too. For example, I can now drop a Motion VFX plugin onto a clip, and instead of frame rate grinding to a halt while it renders, I can still play through with only the occasional drop. And when that happens over and over again, every video, every day, it becomes a huge quality of work improvement. I also straight up love the options for up to 64 gigabytes of memory and up to 8 terabytes of storage. See, when Apple introduced the 2016 class MacBook Pro, I argued they made a lower end SKU on the bottom to appeal to MacBook Air customers, but failed to provide a higher end SKU on the top to appeal to, MacBook Pro customers. Well, now they've gone and done me one better. They've made that top of the line SKU into optional upgrades to the baseline. Clever, Apple. Battery life has been great for me as well, at least so far. For busy work like web browsing and writing, I get just about that extra hour Apple claims. For Final Cut Pro 10, only a little longer than last year's, but if I'm somehow stuck without my charger or without a plug, like I was at the airport when I was trying to edit and upload my hands-on, every minute can count, and I literally got that video live as the MacBook Pro was about to shut down. But that's what happens when you cram the biggest battery allowed by law into the machine and make it so it can recharge fully in just about 2.5 hours. Variable refresh rate is also amazing. I record this channel in 24 frames per second, which means I can just set the display to 48. The 16-inch display is a little bigger and sharper and looks terrific with full P3 gamut and Apple's industry-leading color calibration and management. But, and this is gonna sound odd, that just makes it a little bigger and sharper version of the previous display. When the iPhone and iPad, even Apple Watch went edge to edgier, they also curved around those edges. When I started thinking about what a next generation MacBook Pro would look like, when I thumbnailed it out last spring, I got almost everything right. Everything but the display, which I thought for sure would also curve around those edges. Now, part of me is super happy it didn't. The MacBook isn't an iPad, and what curves add to aesthetics, they also take away in usable pixels. But the result is the new MacBook not looking as modern, especially because the rest of the design language really didn't change. Hasn't changed since the old titanium MacBook. It also doesn't have Face ID, which sure would require a T3 chip with a neural engine block like the more recent iPhones. But it does highlight the curious status of Apple's current biometrics. Every iPhone and iPad sold today has Touch ID at the very least. That can't be said for any Mac beyond the MacBooks, even though Apple has provided remote Touch ID authentication functionality from the iPhone for years. Enough, I'd presume, to work from the updated Magic Keyboard we still haven't gotten. Apple does provide for Apple Watch authentication in lieu of Touch ID on any Mac, and it's terrific, but it's just not reasonable to expect every Mac owner will also own an Apple Watch. It's a more expensive part, sure, and some people are still salty about the cost of Touch ID and the hardware-secured display that's part of the Touch Bar that comes with it. And yeah, it may require a thicker lid to house all the components. But when you think about the modern iPhone and the modern iPad, they're inextricably linked to the modern biometrics that are Face ID. And the MacBook Pro still is not. The biggest surprise and delight of the 16-inch MacBook Pro remains the speakers. I've been using them way more than I've ever used laptop speakers before. Thanks to what I'm inaccurately but descriptively calling HomePod tech, these sound like they are all around me. For TV+, Disney+, Netflix, and YouTube video, they're more than fine. They're better than they have any right to be. Even for editing in Final Cut Pro 10, when I'm alone, it's so much better than before that I can do all my rough cuts au naturel and only have to connect up my headphones for the final pass. The new mics aren't quite at the same level, but they're likewise way better than they have any right to be. I recorded most of my hands-on with them, and you can listen to them right now and tell me what you think. I'm convinced enough though that I can easily see myself using them when I'm traveling, away from my XLR setup here, and without having to cart a USB mic with me. Apple's argument for the new triple microphone array is so that, even though it's not as good as a Pro setup, you can still use it to make do in a pinch. And that's why it's no end of frustrating that Apple didn't apply the exact same argument to the FaceTime camera. It's still 720p and not particularly good 720p at that either, which is sort of like leaving the mics a decade old. Instead, it should have been 1080p at least, 4K at best, and good enough that we can likewise use them to record video in a pinch. Especially if teamed up with the custom silicon Apple already includes in the T2 chip. Even if it's only iPhone 7 level with the ISP, that would be light years beyond the relative potato we have now. And yeah, there's no Wi-Fi 6 yet, which at first glance seems odd since Apple brought it to the iPhone earlier this year. But Apple controls the silicon on the iPhone, not so much on the MacBook Pro, and since Intel is bundling Wi-Fi 6 in with their 10th generation chips, the ones they still haven't pushed out for the MacBook Pros yet, that's probably when it will make the most sense to add it in. Alas. At least until Apple is firmly in control of their entire silicon destiny. Of course. This isn't the next generation MacBook Pro I wanted. It's not quite edge-to-edge enough, curved enough, or neural networked enough. But it's absolutely the new MacBook Pro I needed. The keyboard is, in my opinion, Apple's best ever. The performance improves on Intel even when Intel hasn't been able to improve on themselves. And when taken as a part of Apple's abstracted architecture that layers metal on top of both the CPU and the new AMD GPU and Apple's own custom T2, it achieves performance, flexibility, and efficiency I don't think any other laptop can match. Not without bending the knee to NVIDIA's control and power draw, which is becoming less and less necessary as time goes on. But I'll do a separate video on that if you want to see it. Just let me know in the comments. Music producer Oak Felder said something interesting to me in person a while ago and just repeated something similar in public in Apple's latest ad.
Back in the day, there was this dense obstacle in the way. If you weren't somebody who could rent a major recording studio,
I'm gonna do all my strings like that from now on.
that layer, it has shrunk.
The job of the computer is to get out of the way, so as little as possible comes between your ideas and their execution. And ultimately, that's what this 16-inch MacBook Pro does for me, especially thanks to its ridiculous new capabilities. If you're a pro, I can't recommend this new MacBook Pro enough. And if you're part of a startup, I can't recommend you check out Notion enough. Notion is like a note-taking app, a to-do manager, a database, and a document cloud all in one, and you can use it either on your own or as part of a team. It works like a box of Legos, letting you flexibly stack software tools however you want to build exactly the productivity system you want for you and for your team. Now, anyone can get started with a totally free account. Just go to bit.ly/notionvector and sign up. But for startups, there's like an incredibly delicious extra layer of frosting on top of this cake. You see, startups can apply for $1,000 in free credit. To see if you qualify, just head on over to bit.ly/vectorstartups. Thanks Notion, and thanks to all of you for supporting the show. So, that's my 16-inch MacBook Pro review 2 weeks later. I'm going to keep pounding on it for another couple of months just to get an even better sense of the performance and especially the battery life, and I'll report back then. In the meantime, hit like if you do, share if you care, subscribe and baby Yoda that bell gizmo so the force will be with you, always. Then hit up the comments and let me know. How are you thinking about the new MacBook Pro? Thank you for watching and see you next video.